Welcome to our live Zoom. Today I am joined by the wonderful artists Jemma Powell and Marice Cumber. It's wonderful to have you both here, Jemma and Marice. Thank you for joining us. Jemma, you're in, we're very jealous. Jemma's in Formentera, is that right at the moment?
Yeah, in Formentera, yeah, in Spain. Yeah.
So thank you for joining us from there. And Marice is in North London and everyone else is joining us. Fabulous North London. I am in West Wales. It might look like I'm in the gallery, but you know, there we are. So we're all over the world at the moment. But we're talking today about the summer show, which Marice and Jemma are both taking part on in Zuleika Gallery in Woodstock. And that is taking place until the 23rd of August. It's a group show. We have also got work by Rachel Gracie, Rod Craig and Tamsin Relly. And most of the work that has been made for this particular exhibition has been made and conceived during the pandemic and during lockdown. So that's a kind of subtext to the show. And I guess because of that, kind of the environment that we've all been in, you know, we're lucky enough to see work being made by these artists and to sort of examine, I guess, the world of their lockdowns in this exhibition and the sort of the thoughts and close environments that they've inhabited. So Marice and Jemma, just a little word about each of them before we go further. Marice is a ceramicist and Jemma is a painter, for those who don't know. I've got their work showing behind me here. And what I think is wonderful, we can go into both of them, their work a little bit more, but I think what's fascinating to me is about these two female artists, about how their work is very much about, in a way, motherhood and the domestic life. And I think there's quite an interesting narrative here about creating and making as a woman and as a mother. And I think both of you have come to looking and to making your work at after almost as second careers. I know, Marice, you started making ceramics 20 years ago, but you had a break, and perhaps we can talk about that. And Jemma, also you started as an actress. I don't know, maybe Marice, can we come to you first about that?
Yeah, I mean, I started off with ceramics, and I started that when I was about 23 or 24 or so after finishing art school. And it was sort of a medium that I really sort of connected with. And I started to build a profile. You know, I started to show my work in galleries, etc. And then, you know, just like I have a pot which says life got in the way, and it seriously did. It meant that I couldn't give the time to my creative practice. And Jemma and I have sort of spoken about this a little bit about, you know, even though you have other things in your life which are super engaging and seen to be fulfilling and seen to be rewarding and seen to be valuable, they're actually, you know, there's this inner frustration, this inner nagging that doesn't go away. And that is the feeling of being bereft of the chance to be creative, to be really creative from your inner self. And so, yeah, so then I stopped making ceramics about 20 odd years ago when, you know, when everything became too much, and only now recently, like 4 years ago, returned to it. So quite a big career break, as they say in the trade.
And is your work significantly different now to it was 20 years ago, Marice?
I think the only significance, I mean, when I was making back then, I still did work about my life then, but as a 24-year-old, 26-year-old, whatever, your life experiences are much more self-indulgent. You know what I mean? I really was just talking, I was still talking about my own like rubbish, do you know what I mean, in my head, but I didn't have that much to reflect on. I only had that period of my life, and they were much, much more figurative, and they were illustrations of myself in, you know, in certain circumstances, and they were still narrative, but they weren't as bold, I would say, or as out there, because I think when you get to a certain age, you just don't care. Do you know what I mean? Like, what have I got to lose by saying it's crap, and it was crap? Do you know what I mean? So I think that was the difference, is that now I'm not afraid in the same way as I was at the start of my creative career.
Wonderful. And Jemma, perhaps you can tell us a bit about how you came to painting, because obviously your first career, you're a trained actress and you went to the Oxford School of Drama.
Yeah, well, my mum's a painter, so I've always painted, like on holidays as a kid. I always took my paints. And all throughout my acting career, I would take my sketchbook, and I always did it kind of secretly, but I just sort of never really felt like it was my thing, because I was like the actress, my mum was the painter. And then, so I always knew I would come to it later on. And I was just, in my head, I was just kind of looking and waiting. But I felt the same as you, Marice. Like, I did feel this inner turmoil. And as an actress, I never felt like it was really my way of, I never felt like it was quite creative enough for me. I think for some people it really is, but for me, it wasn't the way that I could express myself best. So I don't rate myself as an actress. So I feel much happier now. And I feel like also I just couldn't keep it in any longer. I just had to have a way. I had to find a way as a mum to stay sane. And so it came more out of like need. It just sort of came overflowing. And then when I first started painting professionally, I guess the point I became a professional was when I started exhibiting in galleries, and it just like went mad. I just produced so much work, and I felt like it was just kind of, you know, it was like it was just sort of here, and it all just came out. So I feel quite relieved now to be able to do it professionally.
Well, it's amazing. I hope you don't mind me sharing, but you had your third baby very recently, during us kind of talking about this exhibition. And one of the things that really impressed me, so impressed that you literally sort of on me about when was the exhibition, literally within a week of giving birth. And I was like, oh gosh, Gemma's keen. And it's amazing that you're so focused on
I took my sketch pad to the hospital. I packed my sketch pad. I didn't do any sketches, but when I was home, when my baby was 2 days old, I did some paintings of her in her pram, and then I did a couple of quite big paintings with her strapped to me. But now she sleeps, thank God, so I can paint again properly.
Well, no, it's very impressive. And Marice, I wondered if you could share a little bit about what precipitated your return to making, or whether it was just literally the, whether you want to talk more about that.
I mean, I think it's really interesting hearing Jemma speak about, you know, being in another creative career, but not having that inner happiness. And I think that was always within me. Like I had, you know, I did have some sort of, and still do have some amazing projects I'm involved with. And one of those was, I set up a charity, and it does creative workshops for people affected by homelessness. And, you know, it's quite prolific, and we had this like a really fantastic exhibition. It was at the Guardian, and it was like masses of people, and it was all fantastic. And you think, yeah, it's really going well. And then an old friend came up to me and goes, oh, well, this is all very well, Marice, but when you're going to get back to your ceramics? And it really was like sort of a stab to my heart, because I just realized that it was all fantastic, but it wasn't everything that I wanted. It really, do you know what I mean? There was still something super missing in my life that like nagged away, and I had been sort of a bit like, I don't know, I had betrayed myself in some way. I had betrayed my honesty as a creative person, because I hadn't done what I really wanted to do deep within. And that was about 4 years ago. And the next day I literally went out and rented a studio. I thought, well, why am I not doing it? You know, like, why haven't I returned? And it sort of really relates to what sort of Jemma was sort of saying about this outpouring. And I went to the studio, and it was like a sort of this community sort of studio thing, and you buy your clay and everything, and the smell was like wonderful. And I remember the first time I put my hands in the clay and started making, I felt the only way I could describe it was like I was a barren well that was filling up with water. Like this just amazing feeling of, I don't know, just completeness overcame me. And you know, it was just fantastic. I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go anywhere. I just want to like stay the night there or whatever, because I just loved it. And I realized that I'd really super come home. That's where I was meant to be. It was like, you know, if you've been to art school and the first day you're at art school, you just realize, oh, there's a whole bunch of other weirdos just like me, and I feel really at home here. And that was just literally what I felt like when I did that. So that was literally 4 years ago, and I wasn't in the head of going to galleries. I wasn't interested. It wasn't, you know, I didn't want to like contemplate that whole thing about rejection, especially as a far more mature person. with no track record, like, or CV or anything. And you know, and it was just by chance that somebody saw my work and just said, you know, I'm really interested in working with you. And that's how it happened. It literally was an opportunity that like fell into my lap. So yeah.
Well, I think we're all the better for it. We're so thrilled. And actually, I should say that this is Marice's first exhibition. Did you say for 35 years? Have I got
35
that right?
years, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's a big one for me. It's, you know.
Well, we're super thrilled to be showing you in the gallery. Jemma, you mentioned that your mother is a painter, and I just wondered how much an influence she had on and has on your work.
Oh yeah, huge influence. I think you don't mean to not copy them, but you know, you can't help but sort of, you know, when I grew up with her painting me, painting, you know, just watching her painting everyone around us, and so you can't help but kind of be really massively influenced. Yeah.
So is she more of a portrait artist, or do you do mostly still lifes? And
yeah, she does portraits and still lives and everything. Yeah, in fact, when she went to art school later on, when she was about 30, and when she used to let us skive school, so if she was doing portraiture, then she'd be like, oh, do you want to come into art school and you can just model for me all day? And then we very quickly, me and my brothers, realized that it was actually more fun being at school than sitting there being painted all day. Being a model.
Oh, I think my children might kind of vouch for that as well.
I was like, this is so boring.
Oh goodness, well, it sounds like fun. I was wondering if we should have a look at some of your work in closer detail now. I have got this PowerPoint which I'm going to share. So Marice, I think we'll start talking about the work that you've got in the show. So I'm just going to scroll forward. Actually, before we get there, I've forgotten we've put this wonderful illustration. Do you want to tell us more about this by Justina Green?
Yeah, I mean, Justine is like a sort of design writer, and she wrote about the charity which is called Accumulate, and you know, in one of her articles, I think I did a podcast with her, and then she came back to me to say she's doing this project called 100 Days of Gratitude, and it was about what people had done or learned during the pandemic, you know, and how they may, you know, change their lives maybe for the better or whatever. And so she asked me to sort of write about what I felt, what I had experienced. And what I had experienced was actually the opportunity to do my ceramics. And, you know, and I had this amazing, you know, sort of showcasing at the London Art Fair, which was during the pandemic. And then, you know, Zulika came to me pretty soon afterwards and said, like, we'd like to show you. And this has all happened during this sort of COVID period, when we had so much time for reflection and to sort of understand what we wanted to do. So this is the illustration that she did. And I absolutely super love it because it's just me in my lovely orange jacket, and I do love orange, as you can see today. Yeah.
I know, I think it's a great illustration. I love the way she's kind of captured you in your work. It's just really, yeah, and these are all pots that you've actually made, aren't they?
Yeah, so she's done a bit of research there because she's gone through my whole Instagram and got those key phrases.
It's wonderful. Well, I guess we'll move on to a Cup of Time. I love this. Almost there. We had this, I think we still have it in the front of the gallery. I felt like it was a really good message for the end of COVID, you know, that we're coming through this pandemic and we are almost there. But on the back of it, you've written "The journey is long." Perhaps you can tell us a bit more about this particular piece.
Yeah, I mean, this is really about life, do you know what I mean, and your goals in life, and you know, sometimes, especially, you know, the recent experiences that I've had with such sort of fantastic responses from galleries about my artwork, you know, you just, you know, you die for those sorts of opportunities. That's your biggest goal when you leave art school or whatever, which was for me, oh God, I'm trying to think, it is like nearly 45 years ago, something ridiculous. No, 40 years ago, yeah. Make me older than I am, like about 40 odd years ago. So, you know, that's what you actually want. And I really felt that I'm almost there, and it's been a long journey, and the journey's not over yet. It's you know, and I think that's all part of it, that this feeling that you still want more, that you're almost there. You know, I'm never going to say, you know, I've done it, I've achieved it, I've got it all, because it hasn't happened, and you don't know what that is. So it's called the Cup of Time because it is about you know, how time carries on, and you want to still get there. And for me, you know, being the age I am, I also know that my time is much, much more precious than ever before. And so this is what it's all about.
Wonderful.
So,
let me just move on to the next one.
yeah.
This is great. The Cup of Repetition. I wonder also whether you can tell us a bit about your process as we talk about this one, and how you come to think about the narratives that you're going to have, and whether, when that takes shape. That would be really interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, if anybody sort of looks at my Instagram, you'll see that the word, or how I describe myself actually as a coward, comes over and over again into my work. And that being a coward is really about, you know, maybe not going to what I really wanted, holding myself back from so many opportunities, and maybe not achieving what I could have achieved in life because I was so looking over my shoulder at others and also at myself as to what, you know, like, you know, my own, you know, whether I had this, the inner belief to really, really go for it. And, you know, and I think only now am I trying to do that actually. And so, you know, the word the coward comes up again. And so, yeah, it's about me, you know, the coward is still here. Do you know what I mean? And on the other side, it says the chorus of familiar sounds. It's like, I know it, I've been there a million times and I'm still doing it. So it's about this repeating thing about actually not going the full way as I should have done, maybe at other times, and still not now maybe doing what I really want to be doing. However, that's sort of changed recently when I've made some quite sort of significant life choices about sort of leaving my sort of bread and butter paid job to just focus on being an artist and running my charity. And so the process involved in this is literally, you know, I just sit and I sort of think about the words, and then I sort of try to describe the emotions that I've got. I've sort of grabbed my sort of little sketchbook here to show. I don't know if you can see this actually. Can you see this? I go like this, but you can sort of see, right? You can just see there's like masses of like all this rubbish, honestly, you know, it's rubbish. The stuff that I'm talking about, you know, and you can see I draw the shape, you know, sometimes I draw the words, sometimes I draw the shape first, and then, you know, I try to work out what I want to have in the shape. And then you'll see here, there's always this, I don't know if you can see, there's always this figure, which is me, actually. So it's about self-reflection, and I just always put myself on the pots to say, you know, I haven't forgotten you, you know, you're still the coward.
So this figure here, I'm just pointing here, is you. This is you and everything.
Yeah. It's me. You see? There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fabulous. Well, I think what I love about your work, Marice, apart from the kind of well, I think there's just such an honesty to it. I think that's basically, and there's an honesty, and there's also a sense of I guess that there are these universal feelings that I think a lot of us perhaps have, but aren't so as articulate about, or so honest with ourselves about, you know, actually articulating. And I think that's what's really refreshing, is to have this sort of played out there in this work of art, and actually in a really joyful way. I think there's a real positivity to your work as well, which is just really lovely. Oh, and then we are so on to the Cup of Reflection. So here we have you again, shuddering.
Yeah, so it's when I look back I shudder, and it is about, you know, reflecting on your life, and you reflect on those moments, and you think that, why did I do that? Why did I put up with that? Why didn't I say such and such a thing? Do you know what I mean? And you look back on your life, and obviously there are joyful moments, as we all have, but there's some times, and I think particularly as women, we may feel that we didn't actually take control of a situation. We let the situation take control of us. And I think that's what this is about. It's really is about sort of shuddering, which is a fantastic word, shudder, you know, like it's that sort of trembling, feeling sickness that you have. And I think, you know, your words, Lizzie, about, you know, that honesty, really sort of struck a chord, because I didn't show my work for a long time. You know, people sort of said, "Oh, take your work to galleries," and it wasn't about that at all. It was just about this outpouring that I needed to do. And you know, it was after about a couple of years that I decided that I would do this sort of event that my studio was holding, because I thought I have to release it, because if I don't release it, it doesn't go from, I don't know, self-indulgent, you know, I don't know, self-therapy sort of thing, into that pivot point where it becomes a communication tool of art or whatever. And I knew I had to do that and talk about my work. It's sort of part of my own growing up and not being that coward anymore. So yeah, so this is about reflection. We all do it. We all look back and just think like, why did I let that happen?
I certainly don't think you're a coward. I think it's extraordinary that you could even think of yourself as a coward after doing all of this.
Yeah.
I think you're the opposite of this. And also to think of somebody who set up this amazing charity and then that wasn't enough. You know, for most people that would be enough to think that they've done what you've done there. So then to have this outpouring here is absolutely, it's amazing. So this is the last one in our exhibition, Scared of My Shadow. And I know that this is your favourite, Marice, isn't it?
It's my favourite, and Jemma is the lucky person that has actually did the lovely act of purchasing it. But it is my favourite. It's the Cup of Conformity. And it's, you know, if you can see here, Scared of My Shadow, it's a whole thing about, you know, being a coward and whatever, and you know, scared of what people might say about me, not going the full length or whatever, you know. And on the other side, it says the little girl remains, because, you know, there's still this voice inside of me which sort of doesn't let myself go the full hog, you know, holds myself back, you know, and restrains myself in some way. And I think, you know, if you look on the little illustration, it's a cake mixer, and it doesn't sort of say appliance, it says compliance. And you know, it's sort of about, you know, that domesticity and that, you know, that motherhood one, and that, you know, homemaker and cake maker, and, you know, you're doing all of this stuff, mother, you know, you're doing all this stuff which is, you know, it's what life has told you, or your peers have told you, your parents have told you that is what life is, or what you can expect from life as a reward. And it's just like, you know, it doesn't have to be like that. And that you know, sometimes I just look back and say, well, why did I comply with all of that, you know, pressure from to do the right thing, when really I could have just done something much more alternative, and I never did it.
I have to say, I absolutely love this little cake mixer illustration. I think it shows your complete humour as well, but also sort of searing insight. It's just brilliant, you know, the idea of an appliance compliance, you know, and mixing it all up and then fusing with the domestic as well, and, you know, putting it onto a pot, which is one of the most ancient of art forms as well. I think it's a stroke of genius, I have to say, and very jealous of the new owner having this one. And then I thought we'd move on to just to show some of your larger work, which isn't in the exhibition, but we're showing this really to give context to the smaller work that we're showing, to show that you work on different scales. These are going to be in an exhibition with an art consultant called Louisa Warfield, who actually introduced us to you, and that's going to be in September. And so I really wanted to show these so people have a sense of your whole output, but also because we're going to be showing your work next year in October, November time in the gallery, we're delighted to be having a sort of solo show with you. So that's really fantastic. And this, again, the vessel of seeking safety. But what I love is the fact that you've gone large, and then the message has just gone large too. You're not sort of, you're sort of just scaled it up, which is brilliant, and just making it even bigger, which is fantastic. And then the next one, the tall vessel of getting there in the end, which again I think is a super positive. You know, there is a kind of bittersweetness in a sense, isn't there, Marice? Yeah. But there's also a positive at the end.
This is about, you know, there's an earlier pot which is sold, unfortunately. On one side it says alone in the playground, and on the other side it says I bounced the ball and nobody threw it back to me. And it really is about that loneliness that I might have felt on my journey. And, you know, now with what's happening, and, you know, just at this, you know, to be at my age and to get this sort of response, having, you know, like all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, it's like, I just feel I've really have earned this place, and I own this place. And it's like the ball has come bouncing back, you know, at long last, all of that sort of denial has turned into something very wonderful now.
Well, that's fabulous. Thank you, Marice. I'm just going to move on to Jemma's work now. And starting with Holiday Chaos. Jemma, I wondered if you could tell us a bit about this picture and about your titles that you're giving to your paintings of this period, because I think you've sort of changed the way you were thinking about these works in lockdown. Am I right in thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted them to have a bit of a sense of humour because you know, I just wanted, all of these paintings were painted kind of in the sort of madness of you know, a family life, and I had this, you know, I was pregnant when I painted this, and it was just, I was all over the place, and I generally am kind of all over the place, and so these paintings are just a way for me to kind of find the peace within the madness. And so, yeah, the titles, I kind of wanted for there to be another aspect to that kind of whole feeling of just, you know, yeah, the madness, and you know, I'm sort of cooking spaghetti bolognese, and then I'm running in and finishing a painting, and that's just kind of how my studio isn't actually in, I don't have a separate studio. It's our dining, we don't have a dining room, an eating plate. We eat in the kitchen, and then next door was this little dining room, but that is no longer, that's where I paint. And so, and I've always painted that way. It's always been kind of amongst the madness and the chaos. And so, yeah, I guess, well, Holiday Chaos sort of says it all, really.
I love that about your studio. It is very much, you know, enmeshed, is that the right word? Right in the center of your house. You know, it's really, it's part of you, it's part of your life, and it is there, as you say, literally next to the kitchen. And I love that. I love you cooking bolognese and then going across to do a few more strokes.
Well, and I did. I've just, yeah, there's parts of me that would just love to have a separate studio and kind of rent somewhere, but then I don't know how much I would. Well, my mum, I think, has struggled with that, where she had her studio it was separate to the house. She's got like this kind of outbuilding, and it was always like this thing of like, okay, kids, I'm gonna go and paint now. And it was like this, the journey from the kitchen to the studio was always like this massive thing. And I think it stopped her from painting as much as she should have done. And so I think I kind of learned from that and realized that my studio had to be in the madness.
Well, it's wonderful because then you also have everything. It's quite bohemian in a way, isn't it? Quite Bloomsbury, I feel, with Bloomsbury colours coming through, and a sense of, I guess there's like you say, a sense of things are changing because they're shifting, because they're your studio, but it's also your home. So, you know, they're different kind of setups, I guess, you have with your still life, and it changes quite a lot. And I guess the pairs will change, you know, and you know, how long does it stay the same in that studio, because it's part of your center of your life, isn't it?
Well, yeah. And then I often have to, you know, if a still life is set up, then someone like, you know, 2 of my kids will come and take one of the pairs, you know, and then it's gone. And so a lot of it is, yeah, my still life has been eaten. And so then I have to just slightly make it up. And that's when more of an imaginative, you know, stuff from my head comes in. So it's like a mixture of something in front of me, but also how I'm feeling, kind of, you know, there's a lot of feeling in that as well, of like, yeah,
absolutely.
What's going on in my head?
Well, there's this lovely quote that we've got of making mistakes, and I guess it's not just making mistakes, but of things changing and intuition. And you've said here, I like the mistakes, they're the most exciting part. Things start to appear and the painting takes on a life of its own. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, well, I think I can get quite sort of you know, you start, when I get too tight when I paint, and I'm thinking, oh God, it's got to be the perfect painting. But actually, when you just sort of let it all go, and then you just start sort of channeling something else, you start to sort of channel something. And then the other thing which I love is, and I think, I don't know who it was, it might have been Matisse, but you put a color on, and then you put another color on, and then those 2 colors have a relationship and they start speaking to each other. And then you think, oh, I'm going to mix the next color. And then that then has a conversation with the color there. And then suddenly it's sort of, yeah, it's like a conversation. And And I can't remember the original question, but
well, no, it's just about how things evolve and change, and the mistakes become,
the mistakes. You start, you put something on, you think, oh God, that doesn't work, or you scrub it out, and then you're like, oh, actually that aesthetically works quite well for me. I quite like that color, or I quite like that shape. And then they often, they are the most exciting part, definitely.
I think also mistakes are what makes art human, isn't it? I think a lot of the time it's the humanity coming in, and I think they're to be embraced personally. I think otherwise, it's a different kind of art, and I love the fluidity and the palette. And I think actually it was quite interesting of seeing the palette of your work also next to Marice's. There's a lovely sort of synchronicity there. I'm just going to move on to Nature's a Treat. We've also got Marice's work here, and yeah, I love this one. I'm not sure that the colours of the photographs are fantastic here, but it looks really, I mean, obviously I'm going to say this, but it looks really great in the gallery. We've got it hanging next to Rod Craig's work. And again, so this is a lockdown painting, isn't it? Is this in Oxfordshire?
Yeah. So this was I painted this in lockdown, and I think a lot of people felt this, where I found a lot of comfort in nature and the simple things in life. So, I mean, you can see some flowers, and then there's a view outside. And I really got into painting green during, I think green is really hard to paint with. And I was speaking to Rod about this actually. And I've always been really scared of painting with green. I think it's really difficult. But I fell in love with green over lockdown. And actually, I painted one of the rooms in our house green and white striped. I've just got this obsession with green. And I think maybe it has something to do with just finding so much comfort in nature and walking outside and looking at the trees. And also, I was pregnant as well when I painted this, and I felt sick all the way through. And actually, a lot of the time I would have a bucket next to me, so I could throw up in the bucket, and I'd be painting, and the painting was like the way that I would feel better. It was the one thing where I couldn't watch telly, I couldn't read a book, I couldn't do anything without feeling sick, but painting was the time where I could just escape. And so, I would spend a lot of time in nature. That made me feel better. And I'd go and stand in the middle of the woods, and the smell of that kind of earthy smell, the smell of like mud, I'd want to like eat. I sound completely mad. I'd want to eat the mud. It made me feel so much better. Apparently, I then later on found that I was massively iron deficient, and so that's apparently, it's like people want to eat coal when they're pregnant, or mud, and that's a sign that you're iron deficient. And I actually had to go on a drip to get iron put in me. But anyway, so I found a lot of comfort in green and in nature, and so the reason there's so much green, I think, is maybe that's why there's so much green.
I also wondered if you could, for me, it feels like quite an Italian composition. Obviously, I don't know, with the view through the window. I just wondered whether obviously you're in Italy now, whether that's an innate influence. And the other thing was whether you could also talk to us about what artists influence you if you look at other artists' work. And for me, I think we've discussed this before, like there's loads of amazing, I see you in this wonderful tradition of like modern British art with people like Mary Newcomb, Mary Potter. There's one of your other paintings here, I remind me of David Jones. I think there's this, for me, you feel like this fantastic kind of, you're carrying on this amazing tradition of modern, sort of classic modern British painting, but in your own way, which is really fantastic. I don't know if you can talk about your influence.
Oh, thank you. Did you say you thought it was quite Italian, the composition?
Yeah, this one to me feels Italian with that view to the window. Yeah.
Well, I always loved Bonnard growing up, and he often had a window. And I think that over the last, since COVID really, that feeling of like I often felt quite trapped in even though my house was a safe haven, and I felt so lucky to be where I was in Oxfordshire and with all my family. And I think the window subconsciously was like this kind of feeling of the world the world beyond, sort of at the end of your fingertips there. But I'm so grateful now I'm here. I'm actually in Formentera, which is Spain, not Italy. But it was like this like longing for kind of there are lots of Italians here actually. I think that's why lots of people think Formentera is Italian, because it's all Italians that live here. Which is why my husband loves coming here, because he's Italian. So yeah, but just this feeling of like a world beyond that was kind of just a little bit out of my reach. But yeah, I love some of my favorite painters. Well, there's obviously, this one's not hugely Ivan Hitchensy, but Ivan Hitchens is, I love him. But I love like Mary Fedden, and she often, I think, had flowers in front of a sort of seascape, didn't she? And yeah, Mary Newcomb, and Rose Hilton, I love, absolutely love Rose Hilton. And I think my paintings are kind of domestic. You can see that, you know, it's like a sort of family home. There's just fruit all over. There's flowers which I picked from outside, and you know, there's just so much stuff in our house. It's just trying to kind of, sometimes I'm just like, I've just got so much stuff, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm never gonna be able to change that. I'll just paint it. And then I sort of get it just all ordered in my head. It's like, okay, well, I'm okay. It's all right. There's so much stuff everywhere. School books and homeschooling and, you know, just moldy apples, and not moldy apples, but, you know, half-eaten apples.
We're coming on to the juicy apples.
And flowers, yeah, lots of flowers.
But I guess this is again where there's a synchronicity between your work and Marice's, as mothers, as women. It's like in lockdown, there's this wonderful honesty about it. You know, you're not sort of sugarcoating. You know, there's a beautiful calmness. I think, Marice, you commented on that earlier. They're really kind of, they feel safe and calm, don't they, somehow, these paintings, but they're also, you know, they're not idealized really, although you could say they are, but I don't think they are. It is just what happens to be around you. But I'm just going to move on to the next one, because I'm aware that not got too much time left. We want to go on to some questions if people have got them. This is Juicy Apples, which we were just talking about. I love that I had to put this photo in on the left, because this was a visitor we had to the gallery yesterday called Olive, who was bred by Phil, who's works with us in the gallery. And I actually, do you want to talk a little bit about your framing? And this is also, I might just give a plug. It's my son's favorite painting, and I think, you know, this bodes well, you know, for a 13-year-old boy to choose this. It's a very sensitive choice, and I love it. And again, I guess maybe he'd probably just want to go and pick up an apple and eat it, you know. So do you want to tell us a bit more about your framing as well, because that's something that really struck me as important.
Yeah, it was my mum actually that said, Gemma, I think you should maybe just think about your framing a bit more. And I do spend a bit more time thinking. My frame is this wonderful man called Philip Ellison in Wiltshire, and we spend quite a lot of time talking about the frames, and he's got he's massively influenced by Italian frames, and yeah, because I'm married to an Italian, I have a huge affinity with Italy and just the Italian art and all the rest of it. But yeah, so this is a mold which I use a lot. On the left, you can see in the picture, in the same picture as the little doggy. And yeah, I like the way, I don't know. I mean, it was just like when Philip sort of shone, I was like, oh my God, yeah, totally. So really, I take his lead, and he does beautiful gold leaf as well with the boat one. There's a little bit of gold leaf, and I just think he's got really good taste, and he understands my work and what I want, and he frames lots of other painters who I really love and respect.
Yeah, I think framing can
and he does all, you know, the beautiful gesso and the gold leaf, and I just love his frames.
Well, I think, you know, it's not
oh, you cut out a bit.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, say that again.
I was just saying, I think framing is really important. I think people underestimate this. The work is really important, but also it's part of being a great artist is this kind of collaboration with a framer as well, and selecting the right kind of frame, and thinking, like you say, about the gold leaf on your Boats and Moonlight painting, and the painting we've got on the left, which is Valentine Flowers. You know, the molding that you've got there just works perfectly with it. This is the painting that I think I think Jemma might be having trouble with her connection. I'll let you know a little bit about this painting. It's called Valentine Flowers because
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, you seem to have frozen a little just in your thumbnail. So the Valentine Flowers, I was just saying, it's the flowers were given to you. That's right. So this lovely work is called Valentine Flowers, and again, it's this kind of, you know, these flowers were gifted to Jemma by her husband, and I think they're really beautiful. And when I was talking to Jemma earlier about it, to me it really reminds me of the artist David Jones, who's Welsh, and Jemma has Welsh heritage, so I think, you know, there might be something sort of intuitive there. Who knows? I think Gemma's maybe catching up with her internet now. And again, just a close up there, and I put this photograph in here on the right of Boots in Moonlight II, Boats in Moonlight II. Simply, well, we've got the lovely Phil there, who's a gallery assistant, but also it gives you a good sense also of the scale of the work, which if you're not able to come to the gallery, it's really nice to be able to share that with you. Yeah, the exhibition carries on until the 23rd of August. As I say, there are 3 other artists' work in the exhibition as well. But I'm going to stop the screen share now, so that if anyone's got any questions, I think now's a really good time whilst we've still got Jemma and Marice with us. I don't know if you want to type them into the chat box, or whether there's anything in particular people want to know about. Oh, good. Jemma says she can hear your questions.
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. I think there was just a moment where the internet to Formentera was being slightly dodgy.
Well, I was just texting my husband to tell the kids to all get off the Wi-Fi, because I think that's not helping.
Well, I'm not sure. It doesn't look like there are any questions. Maybe we answered. Oh, Ingrid, you've got one.
Yeah. A question's come in, and it's a question for Marice. When you make a pot, do you make a template of the shape, or does it just grow from the clay? Could you explain a little bit more about your working practice?
Yeah, I start with the shape itself. Like, I draw the cup or whatever it is, or the vessel. You know, I have it in my head that is what I want to be making that day. And then sometimes the work sort of like goes a little bit, you know, off kilter, because they're all handmade. So it's not like they're thrown, or, you know, there's any sort of mold or anything like that. Literally, I roll the clay out, you know, do the base, you know, cut the circle, and then I start to build it. And, you know, when you build, you can't control in the same way. I'm not somebody who can make those very perfect, you know, hand coiled pots that you might find, you know, in you know, replicas of it, you know, like they look like they're from sort of the Greek time or whatever, you know, very smooth and everything very beautiful. They're not like that at all. They're all a little bit chaotic, which I suppose reflects my life a little bit. But yeah, and then they just emerge, and then when it gets to a certain stage, I sort of know that that's the time to stop. You know, I look at it constantly until it looks balanced to me, you know, the proportions look balanced to me. And then if they don't, I might try to alter to try and get it so it doesn't, you know, so it looks a little, I try to make it at least a little bit more symmetrical, do you know what I mean? So they're very, very much handmade. There's, you know, there's nothing, I don't have like sophisticated techniques at all.
Thank you, Marice. I think there's another question that I can see here from Efrat. Says that they love your work, and they said, through the years prior to starting up again with ceramics, did you keep up with what's going on in the art form? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I always went to exhibitions. If I was like on holiday or anything like that, I'd always go to the museums. I'd look at the work. You know, I had this huge interest in it. And also my work, you know, even though I didn't practice, you know, making my own work, I was involved in the creative industries per se. So I had a design business, then I went into arts education, and then obviously I set up Accumulate, which is an arts-based charity. So I'm very, very closely aligned with that, with creativity. but not practicing it. So I was always, as part of my research, I'd be going and looking at all of this art, but yeah, I used to go and visit it, and then I used to always have a pang of guilt when I left, because I used to think that I'm not serving myself well or whatever. But yeah, it's I think if you go through arts education, that always stays with you, that thing of like going to the museums or going to the galleries, and I was definitely aware of what was going on in the art world. And thank you for liking my work.
Were you influenced? Were you influenced by the Bloomsbury lot? Because they used to make those beautiful pots, didn't they? And it was
yeah, I think all of that sort of thing, when you read sort of Sylvia Plath or anything like that, and you're just like, yeah, I'm getting that feeling, yes, in me, Virginia. Well, I get that angst, I get it all. So yes, very much so. And I think it's quite interesting about the colours, because your work, Jemma, is super aesthetic. Your colours beautifully go with each other. You obviously work very hard on that. There's a sort of similarity with me, that eye for colour is very, it's getting that balance right, that it's like aesthetic, they're bright, even though, maybe what I'm talking about isn't such a bright thing. I'm saying.
But they're beautiful, beautiful colours. Just beautiful colours, and the way you put one colour next to each other, it just like makes my heart sing. Just love it. Love it. Love my cup.
You are super lucky, honey. Let me just tell you that.
Yeah. It's going to have a very happy home.
Some other interesting questions coming through. Actually, probably for both of you, do you find that you can step away from your work for a short time and come back to it with fresh eyes? Is that part of your process, or is it quite intense that you carry on painting, Jemma, until you're done? Marice, is it that I think naturally with the ceramic process there might be sort of pauses with different firings? Can you perhaps tell us about that?
Well, for me, I would paint for like 3 days straight without sleeping. I don't like a break, but I have to often to do the school run and to feed my baby, and then I get very angry and frustrated. But and also, like the amount of Amazon boxes that comes, like, oh God, not another Amazon box. And then so people don't really take you seriously when you're a painter. They're like knocking on the door, and you're like, can you not see I'm working? So I often have to step back. But if I could, I would literally paint day and night for 3 or 4 days. I wouldn't sleep. No, I have to sleep, obviously.
No, I'm totally with Jemma on that. I was thinking about that question. I thought it's a bit like a pull. You can't really like describe it in any way. I mean, I do love, I love looking inside the fridge, what's inside the fridge today. I was bored when I was doing my, my other job, the fridge, inside the fridge never looked that interesting. And, but like when I do my work, I literally do forget about those other things, about like sort of getting something to eat or getting a tea or whatever. I'm totally immersed in it. And I absolutely love it. I can't describe it any other way. Like I just absolutely love doing it, and I love being with it. So yeah, and the thing is with ceramics, and I suppose it's a bit like working with oils, it's like, you have times you've got to wait. It's very, very time critical. So you make the work, the clay, you have to wait for a certain time for it to dry before you can actually start to do your decoration. And then that goes in stages, and your decorating time is super limited, because as the clay dries, you can't put wet slip, which is like a, clay with water, you can't put wet onto dry clay, because then it will crack. So then I know I've got this window of about 2 to 3 days to super intensely do the painting on it, and then you've got this other time you go to the kiln and all that sort of stuff. So there is a time factor that is forced upon me because of the medium that I'm working in, and I only work on one piece at a time, but I would work on that like Jemma day and night if I could. And I don't look in the fridge anymore, which is great, I think.
That's wonderful. I think it's been fantastic. There's been a comment here from Linda Connolly saying, do you feel that you're redefining domesticity? There's a lot of freshness and creative cohesion. Is that something that you're doing actively, or is it just something that is naturally happening with your work?
Is that
Well, it's redefining domesticity, the not going to the fridge, the kind of focusing on your work and prioritizing yourselves and your work. It sounds like it's almost just an impetus that, you know, because you're both driven and you've got something to say. But I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth here. It'd be interesting to hear.
I wanted to, I don't mean for my paintings to be domestic, but I think they are. But I was getting really fed up with, because for a long time I couldn't get any acting work, and I wasn't painting, and I was just being a mum, and I was, you know, my husband's a singer, so he was on tour, and there was, you know, I had to look after the kids, and there was like this feeling of like looking down on me for just being a mum. And I knew in my head I was planning paintings for a few years, you know, I knew it was coming, and it really annoyed me that it's seen as a job that is just, it's not, you know, oh, I'm just a housewife, or I'm just a mum. And I'm so relieved now that I am not that. But when I see people who are just doing that, it's a really important job. And so I hope that through my domestic paintings, whatever you want to call them, that it's like a kind of hats off to women being at home and being housewives and being mothers. Yeah,
I agree. I think it is a full-time job being a mother, and it is a job, you know.
Yeah,
but it's great also to have creativity as well, and we're lucky to have other things in our
life. I feel like I'm on holiday when I'm painting. I feel like it's a break from the really hard job, which is bringing up my kids and doing the shopping and, you know, unloading up the fridge, and that's the hard stuff.
Totally. Well, listen, I don't know. I think that's been fantastic. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. If anybody hasn't had the chance, or there's a burning question that they've think of after the Zoom, please do drop us an email, either at info@Zuleika Gallery or Lizzie@Zuleika Gallery, and we can always do our best to answer them or contact Jemma or Marice on your behalf. It's been just a pleasure to have this conversation with you both today. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time out today.
Thank you.
Well, we're so delighted to be working with you both and showing your work in the gallery. And if you've not managed to make it, and you can, do, you know, get along to the show. But thank you both, and thank you everybody else for joining us today. It's lovely to have you all here, and wishing you all a wonderful summer.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.